Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm blessed, my brother. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Hey, did you see the game last night?
Oh, that was a good game.
But did you see the shot?
I lost money from that shot.
Oh, man, that shot was cold,
I
man.
hated it, but it was good. Damn. What's in those jeans?
You really want to know?
I do.
Exhaustion, muscle spasms, asthmatic issues, unexpected sickle cell trait crises.
Damn. Are you serious? When I was young, I found out I had sickle cell trait. My mom's told me, but I didn't have no knowledge of it. But when I got older, I had a child, and the doctor told me my daughter has sickle cell trait. Do you know the facts that both parents have sickle cell trait? There's a 50% chance the child may have the trait, and 25% chance the child may have the disease.
Hey, that's what's the count. Do you know that 2.5 million people in the United States have sickle cell trait, 300 million people globally? I didn't find out I had sickle cell trait until I was in the Army, 10 years. Next thing you know, I had a sickle cell trait exertion site.
Sickle cell? I thought that was a black gene or something.
Nah, man, the Latin community is number 2. 1 out of 36,000 babies are being born with sickle cell disease. You could be Caucasian, Mediterranean, European. You gotta know your bloodline, man. There is an inherited gene in our community that has been forgotten. The name is sickle cell trait. WDC ONSCT, also known as What's the Count, is out to bring awareness, education, and prevention to people all over the globe. Want more information? Call us now at 323-215-5384 or visit www.wdconsct.org. All right. Welcome to WDC Radio. I'm your host. I'm Farron, aka WDC. I want to thank you for listening in. I mean, this is not a brand new conversation. You know that sickle cell trait is one of my topics. It is my gift, and it connects me to the community, and also it's my message to bring to people about this inherited gene that are not familiar with the risk factors. It's been around for 5,000 years plus. Fights malaria. I mean, you know, things about that we talk about. But this first part is not about me. I met this gentleman here who just so happened to have sickle cell trait as well. It's a connector, but it's not the main subject for today. But it lets you know that if you're out in community doing what you're supposed to be doing or doing your purpose, you come across and you meet people. And I was introduced to him by someone, and he's here. I thought it would be good for us both to sit together and talk as young black men who we care about, what we care about in our community. And again, these are topics that most people don't really talk about. We see them, or we hear about them, but we don't really just open up and just share about our life experiences and about who we are and about what we want to accomplish. So James is going to kind of introduce himself, and then we're going to talk about, you know, why he's here and what he's up to in the community, and then we're going to share what I'm up to in the community, and then we're going to let you know how these two conversations come together and how we plan to, again, for our young black males community, I think that's safe for us to say. Right. Somebody's got to take care of our community, and so if you're not black, if you're Hispanic, whatever, you're still welcome to this conversation, but we can only going to focus on what we relate to as far as being a young black male and dealing with what we're dealing with. And if you, again, another nationality, you're more than welcome to join in and have a conversation with us. That way you can see that even though we're young black males, there is a relatedness because we're all human beings. Right. So don't just look at the skin color. Once you hear these conversations that we're going to share with you, you will be able to relate to us, which is way more important than trying to understand who we are or what we're about. But you will be able to relate to us. So introduce yourself, man. We'll get started.
Cool. So what's up, everybody? It's James, aka Dat Yoga Dude, DATYOGUGADUDE, and I am with Feel Free to Feel Free. So feel free to feel free. We are a health and wellness organization. We're all about creating that awareness, that access, and the practice of health and wellness for community, individuals, organizations. It's all about feeling free to feel free.
Man, thank you for accepting the invitation, man, because we literally met via a contact person, a mutual person, and then we went and sat down to be this whole Starbucks thing, and we sat down and met at a location. And like I said, I was just totally inspired by who you are and what you're up to as a young black male. I'm going to keep saying that because this is what we're discussing, because we want to help take care of our youth and even people older than us as a black male. So I was really excited, especially the conversations that we had about the relatedness. We could relate to sickle cell trait. You took an education that I took called landmark education. So we've talked some spiritual. We did a lot of conversations in that little short time at Starbucks that brought us to this point today, which I invited him, like, look, we should have this show together and let people know so we can figure out what we want to do on the next level. Right. So give us some background, man. Who is James, man, growing up a little bit? Give us some history.
So James was just a quiet kid growing up. I grew up in Corona, California. That's out there in the Inland Empire, Riverside. Shout out to the Inland Empire. And I was able to go to college in New Orleans, Xavier University of Louisiana, HBCUs, and I was able to receive my degree in psychology. So study psychology. And as I started studying the psychology, I started learning more about actually my past, learning more about how I was always the one kind of listening to people and always the one who kind of had some cool things to say to people. And that brought me into the psychology degree. It made me more interested in it. As I got
hold on, let me. So Corona, right?
Right.
What's Corona like? Because you talking about the Inland Empire area. What is Corona like?
Corona's a suburb. I'm a suburb kid to my bones. I'm proud of it. Grew up out there since I was like 9 years old. Before that, we was living in LA with my family and stuff. Everybody in my family is from LA. We moved out there later. Parents wanted to buy a house, wanted more opportunities for us. So we was fortunate enough to be out there. Very diverse community.
It is.
All kinds of colors and just different people and ethnicities and backgrounds. Kind of, I just call it like a bedroom community outside of LA. Most people are from LA or other places, but a very nice place to grow up. A lot of nature and stuff around the hills and all that. So it's an opportunity to really just kind of relax. Coming from LA to moving out there is an opportunity to relax a little bit more and check in.
You definitely got to transform your views of traffic,
right?
Because that is the 91.
Yeah.
And so if you don't alter how you view traffic, you could be frustrated. Right. On that travel to Corona from LA. So, so HBCU. I've been blessed to have an opportunity to speak at some HBCUs. But what a lot of people talk about, that's if you're especially an African American, you want to go to that kind of environment. So what was that like for you at the HBCU?
Huge for me because, like I said, Corona is a very diverse community, but it's not that many black folks out there. And a lot of the black folks out there, we pretty much similar, all coming from LA or all have that mentality of we black folks, this is who we are. So being able to go to a HBCU, it showed me how diverse we are as black folks. You have people from here, from there, listening to all kinds of music, into all kinds of things, seeing black people who are educated, come from education or come from wherever. So that was really powerful for me to see all the places we can do, we can go, we can be, and who we are as black people. And that really helped to shape my love for black culture and black community, even more than just living it, but also being a part of helping it, maintaining it, growing it. So it was a powerful experience for me.
What got you into the psychology field? Because that is a unique, but it seems to be popular nowadays, but it is still a unique conversation.
I had a friend and she told me all about her class. My initial subject was business. I wanted to start my own business, whatever that meant. And then she told me, I'm taking this class and they're teaching us how to think. They're teaching us how to learn about ourselves. And that concept just blew me away because I never really thought about myself. I never knew I was thinking about myself. I never thought about what we do to think or how we think. So I changed my major that day before I even took a class. I changed my whole major that day because of the conversation that we had. Shout out to Erin. I always tell her that. And it just took me from there. I love the subject matter. I even liked the test and the quizzes because it was just interesting. It was a chance for me to reflect on myself and who I was and who I am. So it was a constant study and reflection of who I am. Most people who are into psychology just into themselves. So it's a good subject.
I know that, I have friends who've taken those courses, and a lot of the initial ones are like child development and things like that. So what did you see, when you started those child development classes that you reflected on your own life from growing up? What did you notice, if anything?
I did. I noticed my relationship with my parents and my relationship with myself, on being able to communicate with them or the lack of communicating with them, and how that impacted my relationship with friends and intimate relationships, and how it played out. The first person they introduced you to is Freud, and he always talks about how your parents shape you. And so it made me really look at my relationship with my parents and how that shaped my relationships that I was in. And I was in college, so 19, 20 years old, but it did force me to look at my relationships and say, okay, this is the part I play in it, instead of always blaming it. Oh, they crazy, this crazy, that. It made me start to look at myself, which still is scary, but at the same time very rewarding.
Yeah, and that's, to me, that's something that's, as I hope that we start to talk about as we grow this relationship with you and I, not just with sickle cell trait, but with that mental health piece.
That's right.
Because for me, I think that is one of the most important conversations for people. And a lot of times you don't want to open up. A lot of times you don't want to say something. But when you really look at the work, and we'll talk about the landmark work that we did, those parents are your first line of communication. That's your right. First line. And I tell my daughters this, after I learned what I learned, I took my daughters to those courses and I shared with them. But you have to be able to heal that parent-child relationship. Right. And it is a natural break in communication. People don't understand. It is it's been going on since beginning of time, between when Adam and Eve and the apple and it became all that stuff. From that point on, relationships they've been broken. Right. And people don't understand that is your first line of communication. And if that relationship is broken with those parents, how do you think your relationship with somebody else is going to work? That's right. If the most important people in your life, you don't talk to. Right. What do you anything you want to say about that? It's like a car, a house, any kind of building. It has to have a firm foundation. And we get our foundation from our parents. Even the sense of affection, of intimacy, of connecting and communication. If our parents don't do what they need to do to heal their relationships with their parents, as you said, from the beginning of time and so on, it's going to get carried down. And if you don't have the self-awareness to break that chain of poor communication, lack of intimacy, lack of affection, whatever it could be in, too much intimacy, too much affection, whatever kind of relationships it is, it's going to get continued. Or it could be discontinued because you don't want to get in a relationship with anybody else because you got so many things that you feel damaged about. So it's important to be able to reflect on yourself and the relationships that you have with your parents and take away the blame on the parents. So they did this and they did that, they bad. They're people. They went through things that you might not even know about. Yeah. And they just trying to heal like we all trying to heal. And you say like communication is even not communicating is communication. Right. And you have some people that say my parents didn't tell me they love me or they didn't say these things, but then you have to be able to look back and look where their family, how their parents were. Right. And maybe that generation, when you look back, I know, again, I'm learning this now from the Bible principles, it's like my dad's dad, he worked. Right. And my grandmother, she took care of the house. And so they didn't talk. There was, and I saw that in my mom's family. So it was that relationship where my grandfather, you hear that truck coming down the street, everybody scattered. It's like, you better be quiet. You turn the TV off, like everything. And he come in the house, it's quiet. Right. But you don't really know because, how can I say, our interpretation, our perception, like all those things are firing off from toddler age. Right. What do you want to say about that part of the development stages? So, as you said, our perception, we creating images and pictures and stories the whole time about what's going on as children. And especially for us that comes from traditions of people not talking about the issues and not discussing what's going on. Oh, they don't need to know their kids. We're going to keep it tucked away back. But,
verbal communication is only a small percentage of communication. So if a parent come into the room with a bad attitude, if a parent come in the room and all of a sudden you feel the vibe, for lack of a better term, is off, that's saying a lot. But if there's no words or there's no explanation of it, as a child, oh man, my daddy, he don't like me because he always come in negative, or my mama, she doing this and doing that. And that is something that we have to take a look at ourselves and remove our perception, or remove the story, as we talk about, that we created about what our parents did, and that's why I'm like this because my this and my this. We got to take ourselves out of that story and come into, okay, this is who I am. How can I really move forward? And I come from great parents. My parents love me tremendously, and they are amazing people. At the same time, we're in two different generations. So what worked for them is not necessarily always going to work for me. And we're two different people. They're two different people. So to be able to create my own stories that work for me and move forward through that, and all the pain that I feel like they did to me, and all the wrongs and all the rights, all that kind of stuff, it takes looking at myself and being able to say, all right, my past happened and everything. It was some painful stuff in there. How can I move forward? And how can I build on the relationships with the people who love me and I love? That's important.
And I know the child development courses, they go back to from when the baby is born, and even if you let the baby sit and cry too long, you know, that the brain is so powerful that child makes up things even before words, like you said, before words are even spoken, that child figures out, how do I get them to pick me up? And maybe if I cry this way or do this, I mean, so, and I, only because I learned this 8 years ago, that people discount, like you said, oh, he's a child, he's only 5, he don't know what's going on, he's 3. You better believe that brain is absorbing everything around it. And so there was some conversations I had with my mom. It was like, she said, well, why didn't you ask? I'm like, I was 8. Like, how was I to know to even ask something about that? But, you know, me being able to heal my relationships with my parents, I didn't really start that process until 40. And I was at the point where coming out of the military, life was over, was ready to commit suicide and giving up. And then someone introduced me to Landmark Education. And then that program just, it was like put everything in perspective. Like, to me, I'd say it challenged my subconscious. And when I started going to work on that and got a whole nother future, got a whole nother life created, and then I went back to like, okay, so I got a career, you know, my retirement's going to be fine. So what's next? And then that's when I said, well, my relationships around me are failing, failed marriages and everything. It's like, okay, so who do I need to be for that? So I went back to Landmark since 2016, and these last 3 years I've been focused on myself, but I thought it was to heal the relationship. But when I realized I had to heal Farron first. And I discovered those 3 main decisions that I made, one about my mom, one about my dad, and one about my peers, about who I had to be. And then when I discovered how those shaped me, I didn't work on them at the time because I was working on my career. So we have aspects of life that are important to us. So I was working on career, and then I went back to the relationship conversation. And then now with the Dr. Miles Monroe's, you know, teachings and the Bible principles, putting all those together, we talk about mental health, you know, and I don't like that. I'm starting to not like that word anymore because it's such a label, and it's like a broad stroke of you know, whatever they're dealing with. You got into meditation, yoga. How did you know, did the psychology classes come in and connect that, or what brought that part?
Me getting into meditation and yoga was me learning about it first because of working in the mental health field. So I'm working with people, and as I'm working with people, I'm taking in all this too. So I'm taking in all the stories and all the traumas I hear from someone else, and I needed somewhere to place it. I was going through and going to my own therapy and working out and doing these things, but I need some place to put all of the trash that people were dumping into me. I needed a place to let it go, and a supervisor recommended yoga, and then that turned into meditation. And I really got into meditation when I got dumped. It was a woman I was in love with, and I was ready to marry, do all that kind of stuff. and she said it didn't want to work out for her. And I knew I needed to practice meditation, because I went to the meditation class, and we usually sit there for about 5 minutes. And I couldn't even sit there for 5 minutes because I was just agitated. I wanted to jump out of my skin. Everything was running through my mind, as you say, the subconscious of why me, what's wrong with me. All those things that was in my mind from my whole life, I'm not enough, I need to be doing this, blah, 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 was just really ignited through losing this relationship. So it really forced me to go back to looking at myself and who I was and taking appreciation more of myself. And yoga gave me a safe space to do that. Being an athlete, played football in high school, played basketball and everything in my life, being able to move my body and focus on my breathing, at the same time having my mind kind of just open up and reflect on myself, was really a safe space. Because it can be difficult to just sit there, yoga, and meditate. But when you're moving and you're breathing and your body sensations is going on with the yoga and stuff, it just creates a safe space for you.
Can you say how important breathing is? Because I know how important it is. Can you tell people how important it is to? Because we don't breathe properly.
We don't breathe properly.
If you breathe properly, you almost pass out,
right? Because
you get the proper oxygen in your lungs. So share with how important that is.
So breathing is as important as the charger for your phone is. Breathing is as important as updating your computer, and breathing is as important as making sure you get food in your system. Because when we breathe, we nourish our brain, we nourish our cells, and we need that oxygen. And when our body doesn't get that oxygen, it goes into panic. Now, it might be a little slight panic, a little slight stress, but when we get that oxygen back into our body, it helps us to calm down and relax. And when we calm down and relax, we can make decisions based not in fear, not based in panic, but based in a relaxed, calm mind state. When we get in our bodies full of oxygen, our blood is carrying that oxygen to the vital parts that we need in our brain and our muscles, and we calm and relax. I want you to think of the last time you had to run up a flight of stairs and you were out of breath. You got to the top of that stairs, and the only thing you could think of was getting that breath in. A lot of times we are deficient of the breath, and we lose focus, we lose attention on what we're doing, and we need to get that breath back into our bodies. And so many times, and so many things that we're doing in today's world is not even giving us time for the breath, because we're running from this thing to that thing to this thing to that thing. So just to be able to slow down and take a breath is you taking care of yourself, giving your body and your mind what it needs. So it's really taking care of your needs to just take a breath. Is that important?
So I'm going to dig real quick, right? So you said that relationship really sent you to the direction, to the meditation and the breathing and the yoga. What did you discover about yourself when that relationship failed? What did you discover? Like, was that connected to something from your mom, or like what was driving force? Because we, learning from the Bible principles now is like your singleness is important, is number one, right? Because there is a difference. For myself, was being alone and being lonely.
That's right.
So my issue with my mom was more of the abandonment issues, which came from the body sensation. So when I was by myself, there was this, I'm alone, and lonely was connected. Right. And then when I got into the landmark, when I was separated with the difference of those, then I was able to deal with the abandonment issues, because I knew that I was not alone. And if I was lonely, it was by choice. Right. And so did you notice something about yourself that was connected to that failed relationship?
That failed relationship revealed the fantasy I was living in, the notion that I was living in what I was raised to live instead of what I chose for myself. And I know you speak about after you left the Army and your identity kind of fell apart. So my identity became tied into that relationship. I just finished school. I got the job that I wanted. Okay, I got the relationship I wanted. Now it's time to move into the next stage, because my parents, they've been married for 30-something years. They doing this, they doing that. So now it's time for me to do that. So I was associating that relationship with my happiness and my identity. And when it crumbled apart, it forced me to look at myself, and it forced me to look at the things that I really wanted. Like you said, that attachment to my parents, a lot of it was me trying to please them. So instead of me just trying to please them and do what they wanted me to do and what many people thought I should do, it forced me to take a look at what I wanted to do and who I was as a person. It forced me to go on that road, as you said, where I had to go alone. I had to figure out who I was and what I was trying to do, and who James Woods is and was, and walking that road. So I'm grateful for giving me that time to reflect and be broken just to be healed up again, and then take a look at my relationships with my parents and really develop a relationship with my parents instead of just being their son. Oh yeah, I'm listening, I'm doing everything you want me to do, blah, 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 and saying, well, this is who I am. This is what I feel. This is what's going on with me. And this is how I'm going to live my life. So it really destroyed a fantasy that I was living in, and I'm grateful for that.
Destroyed, huh?
It destroyed it.
and I agree with you on that conversation, only because, and this is only because recently that I talk about or listen to the belief system.
Yeah.
Right. So then you talk about growing up as a child in your environment, and then you talk about your environment giving you their belief systems from centuries ago, right? And then you taking them belief systems in and developing them for your how you manage life, and then you get to a certain age and you're like, wait a minute, well, do I still believe that?
Right.
And then now you got to almost go against what you've been taught to discover who you are as a person.
That's right.
And that's a lot of, I call it peeling the onion, because you go back and you look at those belief systems, you peel them off, you cry, you get emotional, but then with like onions, you chop them up, you put them on that steak or whatever you mix them with, grill them, they give flavor to your life. They give flavor to the food. So I look at it like I'm peeling off layers of my life. Of course, you know, they're disturbing. I do a lot of damage control, but then I'm free, and I've grown to be this man versus just being a male. We're born males, but to develop into a man, it takes wisdom, it takes growth. You got to go to seminar. I mean, you got to develop yourself. And I know the psychology courses, especially going to college, they do develop you to a certain extent.
To an extent, because you still have to choose to get past your own discomfort. You have to choose to let that fantasy crumble. I know some people still hold on to it and try to force it. This is my life. This is what it is. I'm not going to try to even look at any alternative because, you know, for some reason, I'm still trying to decide. I wanted to really know who I am. I wanted to really know on the inside, on a core level, who I am. So many beliefs have been put on me. As a black man, I do this. As a man, I do this. As from California, I do this, blah, 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 blah. I had to always, I'm constantly, is this who I really am, or this is what I believe because I've been growing up and I've been hearing this, blah, 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 blah. So it's always a check, a reevaluation of who I am. And yoga and meditation helps me do that because I'm able to sit with my actions. I'm able to sit with my past. I'm able to sit with my present and even my future and really find out, is this the direction I want to keep going, or let me turn and go a different direction?
I'm not being rude. I'm pulling up my phone because on your logo, you have some words written on there, right? Yeah. And so I did not want to skim over those words because I'm sure you picked those words for a reason.
That's right.
And so I got this. Where is it? It's coming up. Okay, here it goes. Okay, so at the top of your Million Man Meditation, which we're going to talk about shortly, you got God. What? I mean, I may understand it, but what is
God? Is the power, the whole storyline that I don't see, the universe, whatever you want to call it. God for me is what guides me and leads me, and the thing that is the highest to me, because I have my mind, I have my thoughts, I have my past, I have my history, I have society, everything. But I feel like if I hold God to the highest level, I'm going to walk that road, and I'm going to be alone, but I'm never going to be alone. That road is going to be there for me, one step after the other. God is everything that's leading me to the things I don't even know where I'm going yet. You know, just putting it in God's hands and trusting it.
And what about knowledge?
Knowledge is my own wisdom, my own experiences, my growth. Knowledge is things that I work toward and work for. Because people, we can grow old, but that don't mean we grow wise. So knowledge is all the things and time I invest into myself to become wise and knowledgeable.
And you got creativity.
Creativity. Creativity is one of the highest forms of expression to me, and one of the highest prayers up to God. We are filled with so many things, and to be able to express them creatively is just a prayer, because they impact so many people and they make the world so much beautiful. So creativity has to be there.
Number 4, but they're not numbered, but in the middle you got love, kind of right by the heart too.
It's the heart. It is. I believe in love, and I believe in always coming back to love. There's so many things that have taken me away from love, heart trying to get hard and darkened and all that kind of stuff. But I always have to take those steps back towards love, because I believe in it, not just because it feels good, but I see that it works. Whenever I see love in other people, whenever I share love with other people, it always comes back, and it makes my world and the world around me a better place.
2 things about love, because I want to say I did this interview with Dr. Sabi a few years back, and he said that he went to this club and he saw all these, poetry place, everybody's there listening to the poetry, and so he went to visit this lady, and they were talking about the experience, and he said that the mom came in the room and says, "You know what's missing? Is that love is not in the equation." And he said it took him 30-something years to realize what she said that day on how important love was. And, learning what love is, and it's not a thing.
Right.
It's an expression.
Right.
And that's when you go back to your parents and you're like, okay, my parents love me with the best way that they knew how to love with what they knew.
Right.
And so when you are able to look at love as it's not being a thing, but allowing that person to freely express whatever it is that they share as love, you can receive that just the way it is, and not, well, you didn't love me the right way, or you don't love me this, or you don't. And it's so much stuff connected to it. Like I said, it's emotions, it's chemicals, but it's not a thing. And I think a lot of people look at it like, I gotta see it, and I gotta see it this way because that's the way I'm expecting it. And then the person's loving you, and you miss the whole conversation about it.
Right. Love is not a holiday. Love is not a gift. Love is not a set of actions. Like I said, I can't say why my parents love me. I can't even capture their love for me and everything, but I know that they love me. And I know what it means for me to love me. Acceptance and joy, happiness, all those positive things that come into it. And every day love is going to change and be expressed differently.
Exactly. Community, that's right at the gut. We are communal people. We are, creatures who are in tribes, and we come together. We need community. I need to see Farron and be sharpened by him, and I want him to definitely have insights, whatever, from me. We need community to work together to accomplish our goals and make some things happen. Family
is huge. Family is important. Family is, for me, family is just really rediscovering what love is and support is and guidance is. Family is me having some of my greatest challenges. These are people who I've been born into. That don't always mean we get along. We're not always friends and everything like that, but these are people who I know are going to be there for me.
And again, only because I've recently learned this, and I never understood how people could say, "Oh, my friends are my family." And I never could really understood that aspect or that conversation. But then I did hear Dr. Miles talk about, your family is there for those hard times, but you will also meet people that are friends that become like family, and you have a totally different type of bond with those people. But I never really understood that until I heard it from the way he described it in the Bible principles. And so family could be any kind of a fashion.
And I found family at Xavier. My homeboys that I went to school with, we started, and they family. And I grew up with them. These are men who I was able to develop relationships at 17, 18, and we still developing at 32, 33, 34, however old we are.
And your last one, but not least, is self.
Self, yes, that core sense of who you are, that little nagging voice, that decision maker, that
subconscious. I call it the subconscious, man. That subconscious is. I'm a little finish yourself though. We can talk about that after. Go ahead. Self.
Yeah, the subconscious, the part of you that you always find yourself coming back to, that feels good, that movie that you always connect with, that person that you always connect with, that part of you that really makes you feel connected to God, connected to yourself, is right there, and it's always unfolding. And on the logo, those are all aligned within the chakra system. So the 7 different chakras within the body, and I just attached those words because that's kind of where those chakras align with me. And in the event Familiar Man Meditation, it really is about helping us to go through all those different alignments between ourselves, because that's who we are as people. We have knowledge and wisdom and God and family and creativity. Every one of us as people have those elements within us, and through Million Man Meditation, we want to give tools and access and awareness to how we can have a deeper understanding of all of those parts of us.
And how did you come up with the Million Man Meditation?
Million Man Meditation came out of a need. It was about 2015, 2014, when all of the young black men were being shot down and the media was covering it. And it was a feeling like how I felt when Nipsey passed, frustrated, angry, scared, and I didn't know what to do. And so I wanted to provide a different perception of black men, and I was out there. Then we're either doing violent things or the violence is being done against us. And I also wanted to make awareness of the healing that we are doing as black men too. We not just angry and we're not just losing this battle, but we're also taking the steps to heal. I think that was not getting highlighted enough. That we are going to therapy, we are eating better, we are thinking differently, we are having these healing practices. So I wanted to highlight that with this event and connect black men across the world. And not just black men, but the people that support us. Black women, black children, non-black people who still support black men. It's important.
You go into the schools, you have a program. You want to share about that program?
Yes.
What does that do for the youth?
We have a program where we go into schools and we teach yoga, mindfulness, and meditation. We do assemblies, we do classes, we do trainings for teachers and staff. We want to create a community of wellness within the school. We understand that these youth are coming home and they have traumas and things going on at their house, also in their communities, and then even in the schools. But we want to provide them with some tools so they can deal with them in a positive way, so they can cope with the stress of being a child, so they can cope with everything that they're being exposed to on the internet and even at home. So we teach them about breathing and about meditation and yoga, so they can get that mental and that physical tools to help them to refocus, calm down, not fly off the handle, and get back to doing what they're there to do, take care of school, and also build positive social bonds with each other instead of being kicked out of school and suspended and separated and fighting and violence. And we know, since we've seen in the media that suspension rates are high, violence in schools are high, drug use, alcohol use, tobacco use is high. So we want to provide some tools that the youth can use. You're not going to always have a therapist there. You're not going to always be able to just pick up and go take a hike or whatever in the middle of the school day. I love hiking. But you can take a breath in class. You can close your eyes and just count. You can do some mindfulness practices in class. So that's what we bring to the schools. And we know as much as we work with the schools and the kids, we also have to work with the teachers and the parents as well. So we provide classes and trainings for the teachers to deal with these bad kids.
All them decisions they made about themselves, like we all did. and it gets expressed out.
That's right.
And luckily, hopefully you can catch that at those ages, because, with what we learned at Landmark Education, there's, between 2 and 5 and 6 and 8 and 9 and 14, we make these 3 decisions about ourselves, and they shape, who we become or who we think we have to become to survive.
That's it.
Those experiences.
That's it.
I got 2 things for you. It's a touchy subject, right? Okay, so it's very touchy, but I want to hear what your point of view of it is. Is all this conversation about slavery? Like, for me, it's like the anchor. Like, we come from that conversation, and depends on your environment what they talked about that time. It could be where it doesn't affect you, like, or it's something that you come from, of why life is the way it is. For yourself, being a young black male, what is that slavery topic? How do you approach that conversation?
It affects me, and it has affected me. I remember, like I said, growing up predominantly in educated, being around others, non-black folks, it humiliated me learning about it, because slavery conversation come up and everybody look at me like, oh, you was a slave in this. So I felt shamed about it and humiliated until I was able to get older and have more conversation and education about it. Slavery still has an impact on, I feel like, how we operate as a culture and as a people. Those mentalities are still there and it's still being impacted. And not just us, but white folks too. They, a lot of times, are still in that mindset of treating us as less than humans and putting laws, policies, and practice in that place. So a lot of me healing and coming back to my core self is understanding that I don't have to think like a less than person. I don't have to continuously try to be enough. We always talk about how black people got to do 5 and 10 times more to be. I got to do what I got to do for me. Like, I don't have to work to try to be better than anybody. I don't have to work. It's there, but if I'm constantly thinking about what the white man is doing, to me, that'll take me off my focus. So it's there. Racism is there. The system of slavery has had a huge impact on us mentally, physically, and even spiritually. And it's so ingrained in our culture and the people who we are, it's hard to separate and say, oh, this was bad, this was good. It kind of has shaped our culture just in general and what it is. But I want to take those tools and move forward with it, honoring the past, honoring our resilience and our strength as people to go through a traumatic and a horrible, horrible, horrible system, which still continues today, and still be strong and move forward. And it's going to take continuous amounts of healing. It's not going to take, to me, look, the money is not going to do it unless you're putting money into healing. It's going to take just some straight up healing. It's going to take some places that are only black folks. It's going to take some places that are about black healing that everybody can be able to come into. So slavery is huge and still has a huge impact on us.
And I totally, can hear what you're saying. And so, I have this one aspect from my dad's side of the family that his dad ingrained in him, like, I'm going to teach you how to be independent so you don't have to trust no white person, right? And then I have my grandfather who was like, don't put no roots on I don't want to watch no video, right? Because my grandfather was in the age of, at the tail end of slavery, but they still lived on the farm and they still maintained the farm, but they got paid. They tilled the 4 corners, he called it, where they couldn't mow the lawn. His parents went to those 4 corners and they did what they did and they brought it back and then they paid them for their work, but they still lived in that environment. But he's like, I don't want to hear nothing about no roots. And we tried to watch it one year. He's like, I don't want to watch nothing about no roots. Me, I feel like it never was an anchor for me. Like like you say, like I understand it, like I respect it. It's something definitely not to forget. But then I can't say that it impacted my environment didn't focus on that. But my dad did have some things that he dealt with, that when he took Landmark, it was like, well, you know, I don't like white people, something about white people. Well, what is that? I'm racist. I'm like, dude, you're not racist.
Right.
What is that? Oh, I'm racist. No, you know what? I was tired. Like, let's talk. And what we discovered was he wasn't racist. He was prejudiced because of what someone did to him.
Right.
But it was more that my grandfather pointed out. So he went through life looking for it.
You looking for it.
So every time some white person he said did something to him, that's my dad, you know, so he gathered evidence.
Right.
But he was 68 when he took Landmark, and we was able to discover that, man, he let that go, and now he can relate to anybody.
Right.
But it was his mentality. It was those. I'm like, what, you want an apology from every white person? Yeah. Come on, man. That's not realistic. Right?
Right.
But we use racist and we use these terms, these labels again. Everything is not racist. Everything is, you might be prejudiced. It might be something. But I challenge people that if you racist, then why? Right? And if that person gives you a reason, then they're not racist, because that's influenced.
Right.
But because of that reason, because you could disappear a reason.
Yeah.
Because you get to the root of where that came from. But if a person says I'm racist because I'm racist, then you don't want to mess with them.
Not at all.
But if they give you a reason why, or they got some, you know, some conversation about it, it's not them. That's something that, to me, that was influenced by someone or some action, and then they use that for that, you know, conversation. But
and I've been in many situations where I hear an adult say, "Oh, those people can't drive," or "Those people don't do this," or "Don't trust those people." And as a kid, I'm gonna take it in, I'm gonna absorb it, and as you said, I'm gonna look for it. So every time I see somebody that looks like that can't drive, well, you're right. Every time somebody looks at me kind of sideways, you're right. But going back to really having to explore myself and my core and say, that was 1 out of 100 times. So let me look at this and just separate the situation from the person and separate myself from that story that was put on me. And as we say, you know, feel free to feel free.
I think today you've got to be, and it takes courage.
It does.
It takes courage, but you got to be able to challenge your belief systems. You've got to find some principles. I mean, you know, we're spiritual beings, so that spirit is going to always look for something spiritual.
Right.
Whether it's the Bible, whether it's Buddha, whether it's something, you're going to naturally look for something spiritual because we're spiritual beings.
And that's why we put the God at the top, because as that spiritual being, it'll help us to deal with whatever knowledge we picked up, where our brain is going to go to the quickest thing to keep us safe. So if someone tells us white people are dangerous, whenever we see a white person, our brain is going, that's dangerous, let's stay away from it. But if we, as you said, talk about spiritual and connect on that level, okay, that's another spirit, I'm a spirit. Let me just go beyond what I've been taught and understand what's going on right now.
Now, I got to laugh because I haven't said this. This is about the first time I'm going to say this publicly, right? So I was driving to class, and for a moment, I used my imagination. I was like, what if there was no more talk about homelessness, right? If there was nothing, those kind of conversations ended, right? What would this world look like? Peaceful, right? And so for a second, guess where my mind went? An episode of Leave It to Beaver. And I could see myself watching TV at my grandparents with the episode of Leave It to Beaver. And it was on the streets. It was a street scene, so you could see the people, the white community, walking across the streets and whatever. And that's where my mind went to what I would think that peace was. And then I laughed, like, how come it wasn't nothing black?
Right.
What was, but then I thought about TV and how we are programmed by TV. And I'm like, that was a 1970 something episode.
Yeah.
And my peace of mind looks like a white community of peace. And I laughed, but I really started to look at that.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? Why did my mind bring up that picture?
Right. And that's hard to actually create because you're not in it. You know, if you...
Yeah, exactly. So there's not going to be any peace because that wasn't even my environment.
Right. Your envisioned peace leaves you out.
Exactly. And so just to discover that driving to class, man, It's like what, and that's why I know for me, the subconscious mind. I told you earlier, my subconscious is going crazy because I've filled it up with landmark principles to live by, and then I've added the Bible principles to live by. So it's trying to survive all the stuff from my past and my youth I'm challenging.
In subconscious mind, we can go along and say it's similar to the ego. And when we're talking about the ego, we're not talking about your big, cocky ego. We're talking about the part of you that kept you safe when you was a kid, when you needed, the part of you that might still keep you safe, the part of you that pulls you out of the things that you feel like, oh, this is going to hurt, you got to leave, or this is not you, so sabotage it. As you said, your subconscious is that story that's in your head that's based off of things that kept you safe. So I always have to check in with my subconscious, my ego, and be like, thank you, I appreciate it,
Exactly.
but I don't need you for this one right now. I'm doing something that might scare you, Mr. Conscious, Mr. Ego, but I know it's good for me and what I need right now. So having that constant conversation with your subconscious, always keeping an eye on it. Okay, I see you want to start doing something that's probably going to mess up what I got going on right now. You're scared, but it's okay. Let me take a breath. Let me calm you down. It's okay.
I know it's described by I reference Dr. Miles Monroe right now because he is, he was a great man, and his wisdom and knowledge by teaching the kingdom principles is something that I've adapted to my belief system and my theology and my relationship that I'm creating with God and Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit, all those things. And so he talks about the heart is like a hard drive on a computer, and how do you get rid of that old programs?
Right.
You either got to get some new software or you got to get a whole new hard drive.
Right.
Well, we can't get a whole nother heart.
Right.
So you have to fill that old mindset with some principles that you can challenge your life up against, and now you create this balance. And it's been a blessing for me because the humanness I challenge with landmark, and my spiritual being I challenge with the Bible principles. And a lot of times, even when we say mind, body, and spirit, I think that's out of order, because if you get your spiritual being in line, then your mind gets in line and your body will do what it does. And so, what are you missing from your Million Man meditation? What are you missing?
What we are missing is people to come out and to know about it. We're missing people to sponsor it, people to give attention to it. We have an amazing lineup of all African American men who are giving their time, their energy, to focus to make sure that we have healing as a community. So we're missing you. We're missing you to come out there and support in a way. You can be a vendor, you can be a sponsor, you can be an attendee. We're missing you. So if you are hearing this, we're missing you. October the 26th, 2019, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And it's going to be in Riverside, out there in the Inland Empire at Parkview Community Hospital. Million Man Meditation. This is going to be our second one, our third attempt at it. Last year we got rained out, but we're coming back this year, and it really is all about us celebrating the healing that we are doing. We are taking our healing into our own hands. We are taking our future into our own hands, moving forward, dealing with the traumas, dealing with that subconscious voice, dealing with that ego that keeps telling us, nah, this not for us. Black men don't do this. Black men don't do that. No, we do it because we worrying about healing. We worrying about getting our mind, our body, our spirit right. As Farron said, when we get our spirit together, we're going to only want to put good stuff in our mind. We're going to only want to put good stuff into our bodies. And we're going to have that access and that awareness about it through the Million Man Meditation. So if you would like to become a sponsor of the event, please follow the links and the information below on the screen. And if you would like to attend and come, be a vendor, follow the information. We need you there. Bring your cousin, your uncle, your brother, your husband, your neighbor. Bring some black men and bring yourself. The Million Man Meditation.
Cool deal. All right, this is brought to you by WDC Radio. Again, I'm going to put up some quick slides about sickle cell trait, you can drop those, Fredo, anytime. This is the core of my advocacy work. Sickle cell, the red blood cell condition. Again, you can see on the screen. For you, those of you who have normal red blood cells, that's you. But those of us who manage sickle cell trait or sickle cell disease, at any given time, some of those red cells are mutated. So you got to understand that it is a very important conversation. Yes, African Americans, we are number one because of where it derived from. It fights malaria. So if your ancestors are from those parts of the country, you could be Mediterranean, European, Caucasian, Asian, Caribbean. You got to know your bloodline. You got to be tested for it. That screen right there, it talks about the risk factors. The NCAA made it mandatory for all student athletes to have a sickle cell trait test. This graph right here is all about how it's inherited. If you have sickle cell trait, or one parent has a trait, or both parents have the disease, if you have sickle cell SC. These are just a couple of ways this gene is inherited. It's not contagious, it's inherited. And so this gives you just a basic view of how important this conversation is. About 5,000 so babies are born with sickle cell trait a year. 300 million people globally deal with sickle cell trait. About 100,000 a year. 100,000 people live with sickle cell disease. We know that those numbers have been the same since the 70s, but that's what they give you when you look it up and do the research. And then if you could show that one last graphic, this is about the risk factors. The NCAA made it mandatory for all student athletes to have a sickle cell trait test done because there are some risk factors due to exercising, being dehydrated. You could be sick and exercise and have a cold and have a virus. It could cause health complications, and in some cases, people have died from sickle cell trait exertion with rhabdomyolysis. So all that information is on the website at WDCONSCT.org. It is my main conversation. It is my gift, and I do share that in every conversation I get an opportunity to share because it's important. Man, James, thank you for taking the time out to come out here, man, and do this conversation with me. I think that this is definitely something that's needed. And if we're not going to do it, who's going to do it? Right. So I'm with you as your partner to take responsibility for these conversations. I need to figure out some meditation now that I got my subconscious in line, and just try to get my body back in alignment. So anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
Yes, please always be aware of your genes, sickle cell, as well as any histories and paths of depression and serious anxieties. We all have something within us, but we have to be aware of it and we have to take a look at it. Otherwise, we're not being responsible. For you to just deny what's in your genes can affect the community, can affect your children, can affect your family. So it's very important to at least take responsibility for looking at what's going on in your genes. It's important. So I thank you, Farron, for the work that you're doing.
Cool deal.
And you can find me at www.feelfree2feelfree.net or www.datyogadude.com. That's DAT, yogadude.com, Instagram, datyogadude, and Facebook, and all that, datyogadude. Thank you so much.
For sure, man. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
All right, and for me, it's always Twitter, Instagram is WDC Radio on Twitter. You got Farron Dozier on Instagram. You got WDC Radio on Instagram. You got the Trench Talk US on Instagram. All the conversations I care about, especially that Sports Collective media on Instagram as well. All right, I'm out of here. Again, thank you for listening and tuning in, and I will be back. Check the social media, WDCONSCT.org for all your sickle cell trait awareness. Later.
The Consortium of Health and Military Performance, also known as CHAMP, of the Uniformed Services University of Health and Science, known as USUHS, is conducting a study to understand a possible genetic link between sickle cell trait, known as SCT, and exercise-related events, known as EREs, such as exertional rhabdomyolysis, muscle damage, heat stroke, and/or collapse. We are inviting African-American men and women with sickle cell trait and their family members to participate. Participating in the study will require you to complete a health history questionnaire, a form authorizing our study physician to gather health information from you and your healthcare provider, as well as a one-time blood donation. In order to qualify for the study, you must meet the following criteria. The African American, be sickle cell trait positive, be able to read, speak, and understand English, be between the ages of 18 and 80, and currently not being treated for any mental or psychological disorders. Participation is completely voluntary, and your decision will not impact your health care. The results for this study are for research purposes only and are not intended to directly benefit any individual for confidentiality reasons. However, the results of this study are intended to help better shape policies and associated health risks affecting the SCT community. Participants may be compensated for their time. To join the study, or if you would like additional information regarding the study, please contact the study team by phone, area code 240-479-9514, or email sctstudy-ggg@usuhs.edu.